This is a video showing how to build a 4x4 deck for the Group Workcamps projects in Utah. Be very careful to follow the instructions closely. The materials packages and all of the fasteners that you've received are specifically designed to build this deck in this manner. We realize that you may know of other methods to build a deck or stairs, but we ask that you follow these instructions closely, and that will ensure that you'll have all the materials that you need and that this project will be successful. So this is what it's going to look like when you're done. Let's zoom in and get started. The very first thing in building the deck is we're going to build a deck frame, and that you're going to start with 2 boards, which we will call ledgers. These 2 ledgers should each be 48 inches long. This is for the 4x4 deck. If you're building a different size, you'll want to look in your manual. And then so cut those and lay them on the ground. The next step is you're going to cut 4 stringers, and these stringers are going to each be 3 foot 9 inches long. That way, when you put them together with the ledgers, the total distance from the outside edge to the outside edge will be 4 feet, and your total length from here to here will also be 4 feet. So put all of this on the ground, and you're going to use some 3-inch grabber screws to put this together. You want to use 2 screws in the end of each board through the ledgers, and you want to make sure that they go securely in, that they're nice and tight. Make sure that all of your cuts are square, and this box will come together nicely. Now you've got this box on the ground. The very next thing you're going to do is you want to make sure that this box is square. So we're going to square it up, and then we're going to put a brace on it. And the way to do that is you actually take your tape measure and you measure from diagonally from one corner to the other, and you move the ledgers back and forth. You kind of rack this box back and forth until these measurements from diagonal corner to diagonal corner are exactly the same. And once they are, so from here to here and here to here, and once they are, then you will know that this box is perfectly square, and then you'll lay a brace, a temporary brace across it. Now make sure that this brace is not hanging over the edge, because in a minute we're going to use this back edge. We're going to fasten that to the house, and we don't want that brace hanging out in the way. We want to be able to push this right up against the house. So if you'll kind of attach it right here at this edge, you're going to use a screw here and a screw here, and then 2 more screws up here. Attach that and make sure that this thing is secure and nice and square. Once you've done that, lift it up with the brace on the bottom and push it up against the house. Now on the house, you're going to want to come down below this door threshold 1.5 to 1.75 inches, and that will leave you room for the decking that you're going to put on later. So make sure you come down that far, draw a nice level line, and then you're going to use some of those 3-inch screws, and you're just going to attach that to the house with 4 to 6 screws. These screws are designed to hold it in place. They're not necessarily designed to bear all the weight of it. The rest of the structure will hold it and become more sturdy. Just make sure you're securely fastened to the house and run those screws in. The next step is you're actually going to put on some temporary braces, and as you're doing that, you want to make sure that the platform is perfectly level. So you're going to level it in both directions, this way and this way. Kind of move things around as you figure out exactly where level is, and then you may want to draw a line once you get there, but have someone help you hold everything together. And you're going to put up some of those extra 2x6s that you'll eventually use for your railing, and use those, put a couple of screws into them to hold that platform up temporarily. Once you've done that, then you're going to begin to set your 4 posts which will hold this platform up. To set those posts, you're going to have 4 footer blocks, and as shown here, those footer blocks are going to be buried halfway in the ground. This way it will prevent wind washing. It'll prevent that dirt from kind of blowing away from underneath the block and letting the deck settle. So bury them about halfway into the ground. Make sure they're nice and flat, and you also need to get them very close to where they need to be when the posts are in place. In this case, the posts that are against the house, they're going to be 6 inches away from the house. So using a level, you can level down, and that will help you place your footer block. The front post needs to be 3 inches back from the edge. So this ledger is 1.5 inches thick, and then it's another 1.5 inches back to this edge. So your total spacing is 3 inches back, and that will be the front edge of those posts. So use your level to find the location of those footer blocks and place them. And you may want to leave them unburied for now, because when you put your posts in place, you'll probably be nudging them around a little bit more. The next step is just to take 4 of your posts, make sure they're nice and straight, and you're just going to place them and run them wild. Just run them straight up in the air and put them in the footer blocks. Use your level, but remember, you've got to stay 6 inches away. So you could probably draw a line back here on that board and then just set this post and put a screw in it. And then if things are not level, you're going to be moving your footer block back and forth or left and right until that whole post is level, because it's got to be 6 inches away from the house. So level that up. Make sure you're leveling it from both directions. You're going to do that with each post, and you're going to put 3 or 4 screws in each one. Remember, at some point you're going to be drilling through this and putting in some carriage bolts, so you don't want those screws right in the middle of things. But anyway, and if you need to, you can remove them when you're drilling the carriage bolts. So once you have the posts in place and it's looking sturdy, everything's nice and level, you can remove just these 2 front temporary braces. Leave your diagonal brace on. You're going to want to leave that on until the decking is in place. Now you're ready to cut and install your decking. For your decking, you're going to use a composite decking material. It's commonly known as Trex, but it may not necessarily be the Trex brand. And you're going to need about 9 pieces for this 4x4 porch. And so you could go ahead and cut 9 pieces that will each be 4 feet long or 48 inches long. Make sure that your cuts are nice and clean and square. You have a nice sharp saw blade, and you can pre-cut all those pieces and stack them up so that you can install them. When you're ready to install the first piece, you're going to want to hold that out from the front edge by 1 inch. That way you'll have a little bit of overhang, and once you install all your stairs, then it will be uniform with the rest of your stairs. On the bottom edge of your composite, measure back from the front. Put a mark back here at 1 inch. Do that on both sides, and then you're going to want to slide that board out so it's hanging over 1 inch. And then when you're ready, go ahead and install it. Now, up to this point, you've been using some 3-inch grabber screws. And when you start putting this composite decking on, you'll be switching to the decking screws. The decking screws are typically about 2.5 inches long. They usually take a different type of a screwdriver bit or a driver bit. Make sure that when you're running these screws in that you countersink them just a little bit, maybe a 1/16 to an 1/8 of an inch. Don't run them all the way into the board. Just barely below the surface. You don't want any of the screws sticking up above the surface. To install this first piece, you're going to put 2 screws at each floor joist and space these screws about 3/4 of an inch from the edge. On this front screw, just on this first piece, you won't be able to put those screws 3/4 of an inch from the edge, because if you do that, they'll be hanging out right here and they will miss the board. So on this row of screws, you want to make sure that they're right in line with that front ledger. Line them up, and then do your very best to keep all the screws in line so they're not going all over the place. It'll make your project look nice and clean when you're done. Once you have the first piece in place, then you need to find something to use as a spacer so that you can install the rest of the pieces. The spacer needs to be uniform. Here I'm showing 2 screwdrivers. If you're going to use screwdrivers, use them that have a shaft that's only about 3/16 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch thick. You can also use a speed square. Yellow number 2 pencil works great as a spacer. Whatever you do for your spacer, make sure that the space is uniform. So if you're using 2 screwdrivers, make sure that the shaft on them are both the same. But all you do is just go down the line and install each one of those boards, putting 2 screws in at each joist as you go and spacing in between each of them. When you get to the last piece of decking, you may have to measure and trim that down, rip it down, make it a little skinnier in order to fit it into that space. You may also need to hold back and not install the second to last piece. Get this one in and slide it underneath that threshold before you put these last 2 pieces in. Let me just zoom over here so you can see again our decking. We spaced our decking so that it slipped right underneath that door threshold. It's right up against the house. It's nice tight finish. And once you've done that, then you can finally remove that temporary diagonal brace. The next step is we're going to add some ledgers to support this decking, because right now it's just kind of hanging off of a few screws on each corner. So we're going to, again, make sure that our posts are still level, and not only are we going to make sure that they're level, but we're going to use some braces to hold them level while we install some boards, which are also called ledgers. So check level both directions on the post, but most importantly back and forth, and take one of your temporary boards, put a screw in up top. Then you'll have another person put a screw in through this board at the bottom, and then once you've got both of those screws in, that will hold this post nice and level. Now you're going to need to put another board over a brace down this way to hold this post level, and another one here and another one here, so that when you're done, it's going to look like this, and you can see that each of these boards is holding that post nice and level. You want all of these things level because we're going to install some ledgers right underneath here. These ledgers are designed to hold the posts straight. They're also designed to hold this platform up. So these ledgers just go right in under here. The reason why you held the post back 3 inches here is so that this ledger could actually sit right underneath here and hold up those 4 floor joists. And then the same thing's happening back here. This ledger is holding up those 4 floor joists, and the reason that it had to be spaced 6 inches away from the house was to give you room to put your footer blocks in between the house. So we're going to install these ledgers. Now all you have to do is cut 2 boards for the 4x4 porch. These boards should each be 4 foot 7 inches long, and then just hold them in place and put 1 screw in each end to hold them temporarily in place. After you've done that, you should have a bunch of carriage bolts. These are long bolts. They're usually 6.5 to 8 inches long, and you're going to also have a long 3/8 of an inch drill bit. You'll drill nice and straight through the ledger board and through the post, and you're going to install those ledger bolts and tighten them down and get them nice and snug and tight. Once you've done that, then you're also going to put some ledger bolts or some carriage bolts through the post into the deck. So you'll do the same thing here. Make sure that you're not putting them straight on top of each other. You want to space them diagonally, and if you do that, it will reduce the chance that this post will split out, or that the lumber will split out that you're drilling through. Once you've done that, then you can remove all of the temporary braces, and you'll find that this structure is extremely sturdy. It's not going to shake side to side or back and forth, and it's nice and square, and all of your posts are plumb. In the next video, we'll talk about how to measure and cut your stair stringers and install the handrail and finish this deck up.